Any older bass player, like myself, would say that that's what got them into it. The Beatles and Ed Sullivan. Seeing them when Ed Sullivan that did it. It was amazing. It was life-changing. It was McCartney's violin bass and Hofner, and it was just cool. So I was in my basement miming to Beatle records with a broom, trying to play it left-handed. I think the first bass that I had was a Segovia, which is a Japanese model bass, and a K bass amp with a 15-inch speaker. I don't know if it was 30 watts. As a matter of fact, a guy named Obie O'Brien, who also works for Bon Jovi, he told me for the last few Christmases he's been looking on eBay to find this bass, you know, the same bass and the same amplifier, to no avail. Which I thought was really nice. I was working at the Power Station, which is a recording studio that was the place in New York, and John was trying to do his demos and working at the studio, and he would get in at odd hours when the studios weren't busy, and I was called to play on this demo, and they picked different people from. Springsteen was in one of the studios doing an album, so Roy Bittan, they got him from Bruce, and John Waite was doing his first solo record in another one of the studios, so they got Frankie LaRocca, who was his drummer, and Tim Pierce, who was his guitar player. So they were recruited, so that was and myself, and that was the band for Runaway. And I did a Willie Nelson album that was I think his first on Atlantic Records, that Arif Mardin also produced. Arif was such a great guy. He didn't know that Willie had a band. And Willie, being from Texas, just shows up in New York with his bus and his band. And so Arif has, you know, the whole rhythm section of New York, New Jersey people all set to do this record, and Willie shows up with his band. And instead of basically sending us home, Willie said to Arif, well, what? They'll play on one, and then the other guys can play on the next song, and, you know, back and forth through the sessions. So it was great. I don't think there's any of the Bon Jovi songs that I get tired of playing. I'm a fan, first and foremost. I mean, I would listen to the stuff if I wasn't playing with the band. Demos would be done on a cassette deck. It was nothing fancy, you know. There's just the way that John and Richie would bring the songs in. To this day, there's no digital recorders or anything. It's a cassette deck. On some songs, I have more movement on the chorus and eighth notes on the verses. Other songs, I'll have more movement on the verses and eighth notes in the choruses. I'm a big fan of eighth notes. I mean, nothing gives me more fulfillment than locking in with eighths, you know, playing just behind the beat a little, just to make it slinky. And I'll have more fun doing that than any show-off bass parts. I just love it. I used the Sadowski jazz basses for a long time, 5 strings. That's one of the first 5 strings that I had. And when we were doing the Nashville Tinged album, we were recording that in Nashville, and the engineer at one of the studios we were working at was a guy named Justin Niebank. And I never saw his collection, but he's a bass player and he has a huge collection of old Fenders. And after we recorded one of the songs, he says, do you ever just use the P pickup? And I said, well, I don't know if the B string's gonna speak well enough. And he said, well, you should try it. From that point on, it was just the P pickup. I found in my case that when both pickups are up, there's a notch in the mids. And I never realized how important those mids were until I started playing the single P bass thing again. It just sits in a track and it speaks well, and Leo had it right.